Today's video topic you may find a little bit boring. I'm sorry. This is a topic I've wanted to talk and make a video about for a long time. For some of you, it may not count as technology, but to me, it's interesting enough to put it up on this tech channel and discuss the potential, discuss what could be the good outcomes, what could be the negative outcomes, and the main things that this company does that interest me is interesting ideas that not many other people are trying. It is headed by Elon Musk, who is a genius and has been able to run not one, but two extremely groundbreaking companies between SpaceX and Tesla, both of which I'm a huge fan of, so knowing that he's in charge and kind of founded the idea of this company as well gets me interested in the validity of it, because oftentimes when Elon Musk claims he's going to do something, he actually ends up doing it, even if he is a little bit late on it. Today we're talking about the Boring Company, what this industry is trying to achieve, and my concerns with the idea as a whole. No pun intended. I'm sorry. That's the other reason I love the Boring Company so much, is their embracement of puns just makes it beautiful to me. If you hate puns, I'm terribly sorry. You're gonna hate today's video. Let's begin. Elon Musk's grand vision with the Boring Company is basically to help combat traffic, which is going to be a growing problem over the next century. Lots and lots of people stopping on the freeway and cars backing up on the freeway, and eventually you're just kind of stuck there and people can't get where they need to in an efficient manner. Elon's saying that we've developed a three-dimensional form of people working with buildings having multiple floors. When we need more space on a certain plot of land that has a set square footage, we build taller, and that's why cities have so many buildings. But we haven't done that really with roadways and with transportation. Everything is still on a two-dimensional playing field, and that's why you're seeing so much traffic. That's why you're seeing so many cars stopped, because we have all these people working in tall buildings, but we all have to come down to the same exact level of ground so that we can all drive. Now, of course, there's bridges and ramps and highways that go above the road sometimes, but it would be impractical to just keep building on top of the freeways and highways we already have more and more and more and more layers. What he's suggesting we do is turn our transportation network into a three-dimensional playing field, and for the longest time, even way back in the 20th century, people were estimating that in the future everyone would have flying cars, right? We would just have cars take off from our houses and fly to work that way, but there's lots of issues with the idea of everyone owning an aircraft. For one, the noise. People are not comfortable with being so close to flying machines, particularly if you're in a suburban area and a lot of people are living close together. Flying machines make a ton of noise. They can be good for transporting lots amount of people, but it's pretty hard for a helicopter to pass through a neighborhood and for you to not know about it. So imagining every single house with a helicopter wouldn't really work too well. Elon's proposal with the Boring Company is to dig tunnels far beneath major cities so that they won't be detected, for one. They're going to make sure all the tunnels are deep enough under the ground that people who are living on the surface won't hear or even feel the tremors of the cars going by underneath them. And like I brought up, with their own cars that we already have, they'll be able to lower themselves into these tunnels and basically within a tight confined space be able to shoot the car at extremely high miles per hour, because it's a tunnel, so you're not going to have to worry about cars hitting each other. It's not like a just open freeway where there's different lanes and people are changing between different lanes and taking certain exits. With the Boring Company's vision, the car will already know where it's going, or perhaps even the car will load itself into its own dedicated train, and you're going to tell the Boring Tunnel where you want to go, and that little cart is going to fly at a very, very high speed at exactly the point you want to go to. So obviously, there's lots of issues with this plan. For one, digging tunnels takes a lot of time, and for the Boring Company's principle of being able to travel between the city and save some time, opposed to all the cars being on the ground and stacking up against each other, they're gonna have to be able to dig tunnels quickly, and lots of them. Luckily though, we have tons of dirt beneath us, which means there is plenty of networking space within the earth for us to dig tunnels that are far below the ground or not so far below the ground. Probably the depth of the hole will depend on how fast you're going to be going in these tunnels or how far you're going to be going in these tunnels, but ultimately it's going to be a pretty expansive network if it is to work in the ideal conditions where everyone is easily able to jump in one of these boring tunnel holes and have these little cars, or the car itself maybe, just drive through the hole at an extremely high rate of speed and saving you time on the road and hopefully conquering traffic. So they're basically working very, very hard on a machine right now that's going to be digging itself through the ground, and their goal is to make it basically as fast as a snake. snail. They haven't achieved that yet. While it may seem very, very slow when you're talking about the amount of dirt you have to dislodge and also reinforce the tunnel behind you so that more cars can come through it, if they got the machine to move at the speed of the snail, that would actually be incredibly quick and efficient for making all kinds of tunnels throughout the underground parts of major cities. Now, of course, there are a ton of issues with this plan. One concern a lot of people have is earthquakes or flooding. Elon has actually responded to these directly on Twitter in the past and has said that during an earthquake, a tunnel can actually be one of the safest places to be. The main priority when the earth is shaking so much is things falling over or things collapsing, and when your tunnel is built directly into the ground and it has reinforcement backing it up, if you look statistically at earthquakes in major cities, sometimes the tunnel was the safest place to be. Even if it ends up trapping you on the inside, if you're at the top of a high skyscraper, there is far more room for error. Since we haven't had a major earthquake at the location of the current one and only boring tunnel, which is a test tunnel built in LA, we're not exactly sure how these things are going to behave during an earthquake. But statistically, there's reason to believe that they're not going to collapse in on themselves, and they're going to actually do a pretty good job in the event that the earth is shaking a lot. Now, to me, there's rare instance concerns with the Boring Company's idea, and then there's also non-rare instance concerns where most of my attention is devoted to. So a few more rare instance concerns people have is what happens if a car breaks down while it's in the tunnel, particularly if it's this small of a tunnel that people are transporting themselves through. What if a car breaks down? Does that mean everyone who's now in that tunnel can't get out? Is there a way for them to back out? There's no way for someone to pass a car that breaks down inside the tunnel. Or maybe if there's some debris down there, do they have to close off the entire tunnel, getting a bunch more people stuck in traffic, except now they're underneath the earth, which has its own new assortment of problems. But all of those concerns I've seen people brought up are in the instance of something going wrong, which is something to take into consideration. I completely get that, but I'm sure probably the Boring Company's response and Elon's response to that is, well, we're gonna live in a world where Teslas are so reliable and self-driving cars and EVs are so consistently not breaking down that you won't have to worry about something going wrong. You won't have to worry about debris getting in there because everything is going to work perfectly because the cars are reliable and they don't have problems. What are problems? They'll probably have some kind of response to like that and say, yeah, you know, when there's a problem inside a tunnel, it'll suck, but it's not going to be very often. That's not where my concerns lie though. My concerns lie with the issue of getting people down into the tunnel. At least with the current test version, you have to get people pretty deep beneath the ground in order to get to the point where the people on the surface are not hearing the cars going through the tunnel. They're not hearing or feeling any of the tremors that probably very, very high-speed vehicles would cause when going underground. So they have a certain digging limit that they have to reach, and that's gonna take time. It's not really easy for a bunch of cars to suddenly drop that drastically below the surface and then start moving. So personally, I feel like since digging these tunnels is going to take a lot of time and you're gonna have to have such a massive network of them, for a good chunk of the Boring Company's future, it's probably going to just cause more traffic because there's going to be huge lines developing behind the entry points. Everyone's gonna be in line to get into the tunnel, that eventually you're just gonna have a big chain of cars stacked up behind each other and you're stuck in the Boring Company line because you're trying to get in the tunnel, and so is everyone else. See, right now, as inefficient as our 2D transportation system is with freeways and on-ramps and everybody joining up on the interstate constantly, at least we have the ability to easily and fairly simply go off a rural road and join on to an interstate or highway because it just has a ramp. Lots of people don't even have to slow down. They don't have to go down to 0 miles an hour. They can just speed up on the ramp and suddenly join everyone on the freeway. Yes, there's more traffic there as the population goes up. Traffic is not going to fix itself. It's probably going to get worse in the coming decades, but still joining the ramp process is a lot more simple than everyone having to stop, wait to 0 miles an hour, and then having this little platform lower you down, which maybe you can make the argument that the testing version of it right now is particularly slow because they're trying to be safe. So the little elevator that lowers your car down to the tunnel, yeah, that's a little slow right now, but honestly, they can't make it super fast. They can't let it be just a giant free fall drop when you move down to the tunnel. For one, that's gonna freak people out, and for two, it's probably just not safe for the machinery that's going to be lifting cars up and down all day into these tunnels, which potentially could get even deeper than the test one we already have seen footage of. So ultimately, I feel like the Boring Company might unintentionally solve traffic by having all the Teslas and autonomous driving vehicles, they're in line behind the Boring Company tunnel, which means there's more space on the freeways for everyone to just keep driving the old-fashioned way because everyone's stuck in the Boring Company tunnel line, which maybe if you compare the speed of being stuck in traffic versus being stuck in traffic waiting to get into the Boring Company tunnel, perhaps perhaps you'll be able to save a little bit of time. I just don't think it's going to work in the ideal manner that everyone keeps describing it in. Yeah, sure, the actual transportation part of not having buildings to worry about, not having residential areas to worry about, and just have more straight lines of tunnels going from point A to point B. Plus, since it's underground and since the tunnels are so narrow, you're going to be able to increase your speed to well over 100 miles an hour and not have to worry about accidents. I get all that. The process of going from point A to point B is going to be faster than using a standard freeway. However, I think just starting at point A is going to be much more difficult than before, because you can only have a hole in the ground be so large and let so many people drop down into it. And at the end of the day, roads are so complicated and roads are so all over the place because we all have different places to go. We all have different buildings to get to. So it's not really going to be super practical to put boring company holes at every single business address that people are transporting to, which means the boring company tunnels will have to pick general spots that are close enough to a vast amount of businesses and residential areas in order to make the tunnel practical. So it's like, well, this tunnel isn't going to take you directly to your business, but it will take you pretty close. It'll take you within 3 miles, or it'll take you within 4 miles. And if that's the case, and they have to be concise and they have to place the holes in the ground depending on where the most people live and where the most people work, then that means a ton of people are going to be lining up to get out of the boring company tunnels and also to get into the boring company tunnels, which means, yes, the transportation part is much faster in the traveling process, but getting out of the tunnels is going to be a huge bottleneck because so many people are using it, and getting into the tunnels is going to be a huge bottleneck. So we don't have vast amounts of data that we can test this with because currently there's only one tunnel. It's not in a super populated area. And of course, it's not something anyone can use. It's in the development phases right now. Though I'm sure absolutely that I am not speaking in a subject I know a ton about. I'm sure Elon is probably already thinking about all the things I'm bringing up. And I'm not doubting the company's idea because personally, I do agree that traffic is going to be an increasingly large problem in the 21st century with more and more people living in cities and the population as a whole just getting higher and higher. I will confirm that despite all my criticisms of the boring company's idea, I can't think of a better alternative. I don't think flying cars is a better idea. That's going to be too expensive and also too dangerous, too noisy, instead of just digging some more narrow tunnels that we can drive the cars we already are owning through. To me, that's far more practical than assuming everyone will be able to be their own pilot or will somehow be able to create flying machines that are quiet enough and cheap enough that everyone will be able to buy them and just fly through the sky. The airports are already as complicated as they are. It's not going to be something every person will be able to own. Even as exciting as it is, I know it would be cool that in the future everyone has their own flying cars, but everyone has different takes on the boring company. I've seen some people say that why don't they just build tunnels and then put trains in them, like the subway, which is not an terribly new idea, but just bringing more public transportation to cities that lots of people can get on board with. But that, of course, would require the tunnels to get to more specific locations instead of just a general area, which is going to be more expensive and take more time, and trying to find a way to justify spending all this money on digging these tunnels through every single place there's even a bus stop. They'll probably go bankrupt very, very quickly, which Elon Musk is not against, and he's usually okay with bailing out his own companies with his own personal money. I don't doubt he would do that in a second for the boring company. But personally, I actually think that Teslas and autonomous driving as a whole may end up preventing traffic in the long run accidentally. Maybe not even the way Tesla is imagining, but if we get to a point where almost all cars on the road are getting better at driving themselves and communicating with each other, like so many companies who promote 5G or talk about how in the future all of our cars will be joined in on one network and they'll be communicating with each other, we can prevent the whole root cause of traffic in the first place, which is accidents, a lot of human error, and it's also a lot of people traveling at different speeds. Some people go really, really fast, some people go slower, some people have to stop, some people have to change lanes, and all these human variations on the freeway is what can cause a lot of traffic. It's not necessarily just that there's a lot of people on the road, though of course that does contribute to it, but if all the cars were communicating with each other and all of them knew exactly who was going where, and they knew how to let people in and let certain cars get in the fast lanes and let certain cars get in the slow lanes, and we simply take away the variation of human error from highway travel, I think we may make regular road transportation way more efficient once more cars are able to communicate with each other. But of course, that's a long time away. We're talking decades and decades from now, so boring company might be a more short-term solution, but long-term, I think once cars are communicating with each other and maybe manual actual human driving becomes less common because humans are so unpredictable, humans cause tons of car crashes, and maybe maybe someday our governments are going to decide that autonomous driving ends up being more safe than human driving, which, as some of you may be shocked to hear that and go, no, 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 a robot can never be good as a human. Keep in mind how many people get drunk, get behind the steering wheel of a car, and end up killing people. It literally happens every 10 minutes, and humans are the root cause of basically all car accidents, which happen all the time. So a computer doesn't really have to be that good to be better than the average human driver who is distracted, who is not very smart, and could even have their license expired, you know? We don't know for sure. So giving complete control over to a network in the future where all the cars are able to communicate and know where everyone is going, that may end up solving a lot of traffic on its own. And you might not even have to worry too much about having a vast amount of tunnels underneath the ground to get everyone where they need to be. Anyway, though, I know this is not our typical video subject, but I found it incredibly interesting, and I know it's already getting to be a longer video, so I'm gonna cut it off here. But of course, I wanna hear more about your guys' thoughts on the Boring Company. What concerns do you have? What interests do you have? Do you have counterpoints to what I brought up today? Let me know what you're thinking by hitting me up over on Twitter or joining our Discord. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.